This is the Auburn Podcast, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. Brought to you by Auburn Undercover and ESPN 1067. Got lots of messages and comments yesterday on Twitter and YouTube and SoundCloud, Facebook. I really think we got them everywhere. I took a day off. Sorry, guys. And I hate that it lined up with the show that should have been after what happened on Saturday. Was in Jacksonville for the Pats game, which didn't go well. All right, so, obviously Auburn loses in walk-off fashion to LSU. An LSU team that looked really good. We knew they'd be good defensively. Really hadn't shied away from that. I thought their defense, LSU's defense, would be on the field all game, and it would get worn out. And it really kind of seemed like it was the other way around. Joe Burrow looked really, really, really good. In fact, if you look at the two quarterbacks involved in Saturday's game, Joe Burrow, if that's all you looked at, Joe Burrow looked significantly better than Jarrett Stidham. And so on my way back from Jacksonville this weekend, I was kind of thinking, all right, how am I going to address this game? Because in the past, I've really defended Gus Malzahn. I've had no issue with the contract, and I still don't have an issue with the contract. That's just because they're all going to look like that over the next few years. Auburn was just kind of there. But he messed up on Saturday. He was not a good head coach on Saturday. He was not a, $50 million head coach on Saturday. I've said this in the past about Nick Saban, but whenever Nick Saban loses, he underachieves because he has the better roster no matter who he plays in college football. And with all the talk that we've had all summer, all the talk we've had all offseason, whether it was all the way back to spring or even last year when talking about this year, we kind of all expected Auburn to have a better roster than I think anyone that they played except for maybe Georgia and then definitely Alabama. And when you're at home and you have the better team, you should win. Obviously, that did not happen on Saturday. A lot of that had to do with quarterback play. Jarrett Stidham looked awful. He looked really, really bad. And sure, he had some throws that were on the money that you expect Jarrett Stidham to make. Those two picks, the first one in particular was really, really bad. I mean, he was telegraphing the throw. You knew where he was going as soon as the ball was snapped, staring down his guy. Not a fan of this rollout business that they kept calling. When you have a quarterback like Jarrett Stidham, let him use the whole field. When you roll out to one side, and I know that you can have a design throwback. We've seen Auburn do that in the past. But when you roll out to the side, you're doing that to help your quarterback that doesn't have a strong arm. You see that all the time in college football. And it works because it helps out your guys. But the issue is when you roll the pocket, when you roll your quarterback outside of the pocket one way, you shorten your field. You have access to less. And when you have a guy like Stidham, who's got an arm that you want leading your offense, why would you limit what he can throw to? I hate that call. I absolutely hate it. They called it a lot Saturday. It seemed like a lot. It was probably like 2 or 3 times. I haven't gone back to watch the game yet. I just got back last night. So I will do that and make my GIF threads and all that. But what Stidham did on Saturday, he did not look like a first-round draft pick. You know, that's kind of been what's talked about with Stidham. It's like, all right, how good can he be? And I'm not saying he won't be a first-round draft pick. I'm just saying what he put on the field and what he put on tape on Saturday, it wasn't good. And I love Jarrett Stidham, but it wasn't what he's capable of, and I'm sure he'd be the first to tell you that. He took responsibility for it after the game. He's an aware kid. He knows what's going on. It's just kind of part of it. You got to take the good and you got to take the bad, and there was a lot of bad on Saturday. A lot of bad on Saturday. Trying to find Stidham's passing numbers. Here they are. 16 for 28, 198, a touchdown, and then 2 interceptions. Of course, the touchdown was to Darius Slayton. I thought the receivers looked good on Saturday. I thought they were fine. Anthony Schwartz, 2 catches, 37 yards. Seth Williams, 2 catches, 35 yards. Darius Slayton, 3 catches for 33 yards. Asa Martin, a catch for 33 yards. Ryan Davis, 3 for 23. Chandler Cox, 3 for 20. Yeah, I mean, the receivers weren't why Auburn lost on Saturday. It was quarterback play, offensive line play, and defensive line play. I know some of you are thinking, well, what about the defensive backs with the pass interferences? We will get there. I promise we will get there. Love that Sean Shivers started. I made it 6 minutes into the show mentioning that. But I think it sends something. And obviously Sean Shivers isn't the starting running back. It's clearly Jatarvius Whitlow at this point. Whitlow got 22 carries. Shivers got 7. Stidham took 5 officially in the stat sheet. Cam Martin had 2. That's pretty clear to me that Cam Martin is not the first or second string running back. And let me tell you what, as a guy that was kind of waving the Cam Martin flag this offseason, I'm a little surprised by it. Do not question the decision at all by the coaching staff. I thought Cam Martin would be better. And let me tell you something. I think the coaching staff did as well. I think his teammates thought that Cam Martin was the guy. Just looking at social media and how those guys' faces would light up when talking about Cam Martin. I talked to guys who were at practices and I'm like, Cam Martin can do this thing. He's Auburn's next 1,000-yard rusher. And that's not the case. It's not. He's Auburn's third-string running back. Sean Shivers, who's been on campus for like 3 weeks, exaggeration, but he's clearly better. There's no debate to it. Cam Martin's biggest thing was speed. Sean Shivers, I think, is faster than Cam Martin. He's quicker, he's stronger, and he has better field vision. And honestly, just the team is better when Sean Shivers is on the field and when Boobie Whitlow is on the field than when Cam Martin is on the field. Do I think Cam Martin could be better against certain defenses? Yes, we've talked about that in the past. But when he matches up with LSU, Washington, Georgia, Alabama, the good teams on Auburn's schedule, he's not going to do it. So why start him the rest of the games? Jatarvius Whitlow, 22 carries for 104. Sean Shivers, 7 for 25. Those were the 2 that scored rushing touchdowns. I'm cool with it. Those are the 2 guys going forward. And I think they complement each other well because I think Sean Shivers is better at doing what Cam Martin does than what Cam Martin is. It's a bummer. That's just kind of the way it is. I mean, everybody talked about how fast Anthony Schwartz was all offseason. Sean Shivers was like a tenth of a second behind him on like every race that they did in Florida. They're both fast. Anthony Schwartz looks more like a receiver than I ever thought he would. I thought he was just going to be this like speed sweep guy and vertical guy. No, the guy's an actual receiver, which is exciting, but didn't see a whole lot of it because the quarterback play was subpar on Saturday by Jarrett Stidham's standards. Now, did I think Auburn's offense could play like that and still win? Yes. Once again, going back to what Joe Burrow did, LSU's quarterback was top-notch, and he was fantastic. 15 for 34, not extremely efficient, but took care of the football. 249 yards to the air and a touchdown. Rushing, LSU didn't run the ball well, but just passing the football, I mean, that's where they got it done. Jefferson, 5 catches, 97 yards. Dillon, what was Dillon's first name? Derek Dillon with the backbreaker, 1 catch for 71 yards. And this is going to make some people mad, but, the whole, like, Auburn's defense elite, you can't say that anymore. You can't. I know it was one bad game, but what a bad game it was. And let me say that I am taking nothing away from LSU here. They did everything they took advantage of everything that was handed to them. The defense looked bad. LSU's receivers were wide open. It's not like they, one consistent 50-50 balls. And once again, Joe Burrow threw it to the open guy, which is fine. I mean, he did it time and time and time again. And there's this misconception. It's like, oh, well, you're not a good quarterback if you only throw it to like guys who are wide open. I'm a Patriots fan. I was there this weekend, and it's just a weird argument. It's like you want to throw it to the guy that's in double coverage. But Joe Burrow took what the defense gave him, which was a lot of space, and props to LSU's guys. And once again, I haven't watched the tape and gone back and really dissected it play by play. I plan on doing that this evening. And LSU's guys may have been better route runners than I thought they were. But just watching it at the time, it's like, well, Auburn's defense is just nowhere to be seen. Guys were wide open, and it was hot. Oh, I get it. It was hot, but LSU's defense had no issue with it. They weren't leaving guys wide open. And, hey, the pass rush for Auburn, it disappeared. It disappeared. We spent all offseason talking about how valuable the depth up front was going to be for the Tigers and how they were 3 deep at some positions, 2 deep at all of them. And Saturday's the game where you needed that. When it was felt like 106 degrees on the field, that's when you wanted it. And it didn't really matter. It didn't pay off. It didn't pay off. The deep pass rush was not what Auburn needed. And it's not really what I think a lot of Auburn fans expected. This defense is not as good as we thought it was. Am I overreacting? Let me know. At Z Blackerby on Twitter. If you're listening on YouTube, comment. Kevin Steele, though, to his credit, I mean, Kevin Steele took responsibility for everything. In fact, I really like what he said. And in what I'm about to play, he said like 90% of the snaps were good. And that's true. When the backbreaker is one reception for 71 yards, it's true. I mean, defensively, they stopped the run well. 90% of the snaps were solid, but those 10% weren't.
Very disappointing loss, frustrating, really unacceptable for our standards. And in terms of the play, it starts and ends with me. I'm responsible for making sure that people don't come and score 22 points on Jordan-Hare Field, and they did. And so, you have to look at everything. All options are on the table in terms of making sure we get corrected what needs to be corrected in a fast way. We've got good players.
Right.
They play hard.
Right.
And probably, I'd say, 90% of those snaps, as you grade the film,
there it is,
are really good football. Really good football. They rushed the football 40 times for 122 yards at 3.0 per carry. That's very, very good. Really, it's acceptable.
It's just a shame that the 10% came at the end of the game. I really think it was a fatigue thing. Some of it may have been scheme. I really think a lot of it was just those guys were worn out. Does that prove that LSU was tougher? Maybe. It certainly looked like it late. The coaching staff's response to all of this is significantly different than when they lost to LSU last year. Right, we think back to that. That's when Gus Malzahn said over and over again, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. I think he said it 3 times. I did a whole podcast essentially dedicated to how Malzahn handled all of that because it frustrated me. And I'm not even like, I don't really consider myself an Auburn fan. I enjoy covering the team, and I went to Auburn, but it rubbed me the wrong way just because of, okay, this guy's a successful college coach, and it's like his lack of awareness there was incredible. It's different now. It actually seems like they are hurting over this loss, which I think is a good thing. I think the issue here is you don't really know how they're going to respond and how much better they get until they play Georgia. Auburn's going to kill Arkansas this week. They do it against good Arkansas teams. And this Arkansas team is awful. When North Texas beat them, Colorado State beat them, this isn't an SEC caliber Arkansas team. Now, the truth of the matter is, there's not a whole lot of good teams in college football right now. You got Alabama and Georgia. Maybe you could put LSU up in there. I mean, after that, I don't know where you go. LSU definitely deserves to be there. And you got your other schools that, Clemson doesn't look that good. I think Ohio State's fine. I think they're pretty good. I mean, there's a reason that Auburn lost, and they're still ninth. They're 2-1, and one of those wins is over Alabama State. Now, granted, the other one's Washington, obviously a good team. But I just think that says a lot. Auburn's not out of it. And I know the gut reaction is, oh, it's over, the sky is falling. Auburn isn't out of it. And in fact, the last two times Auburn's won the SEC West, they've lost to LSU. I mean, as late as last year. So if you're listening to this and you're an Auburn fan, it's not over. Now, a lot needs to change. Quarterback play needs to become more consistent. Defensive line play needs to be as dominant as we thought it would be. And then offensive line play, it needs to be better. And there's reports coming out that they're going to look at personnel, and you probably should. But I'm not entirely sold it's a personnel thing. I don't think there's a big gap between Caleb Kim and Nick Brahms. I mean, you got to try it. If Brahms is healthy, which it seems like he's ready to go, you got to try it. But it's interesting. Outside of that, you look at each individual case, and I don't think Harrell's bad. Horton, I thought Horton would be better, but I don't think he's a liability. I think the tackles are okay. So if it is just the center spot, try it out. I'm not entirely sold it's a personnel issue, but you've got to at this point. You've got to. And also, you have several games until I think it matters again. Auburn's going to take care of business this Saturday, and it's not going to mean anything to anyone. Is that fair? No, but it's valid, and it makes sense. All right, the defensive pass interference calls at the end of the game. One was a pass interference. One wasn't. The one that was the Jamel Dean contact, by rule, it was pass interference. Was I surprised it was called? Yeah. I mean, you don't see those late in games. You don't see it late in games. And they kind of let him do that all game. A lot of people messaged me wanting me to kind of point out and call out the fact that Greedy Williams was all over Auburn receivers, and he was. But also, he's going to be a first-round draft pick, and that's just kind of how it is. He's going to get the benefit of a doubt every single time. And he knows it. And he should play like that. Greedy Williams is a heck of a player. And a lot of those really good corners, they're aggressive. You saw it at Clemson a few years ago with Cordrea Tankersley. That guy was all over everyone. He was very grabby. But he could do it. And he got away with it. Carlton Davis got away with it, by the way. Last year, he was very physical. And I know people remember the times where he was flagged. There were several times where he was all over guys when he wasn't flagged. This is part of it. It's an imperfect game. And that's part of the reasons we love the highs and we hate the lows, is because some things are out of your control. It's the way it is. It's the way it is. Should LSU have been flagged for some? Probably. Should Auburn have been flagged for less? Probably. I mean, it could have gone either way. A lot of people mad about holding calls or lack thereof of holding calls of LSU on Auburn's defensive front. As a former offensive lineman, I get it. You've got to hold those guys. And sometimes you get the call, sometimes you don't. It does seem like Auburn's gotten it a little bit less than they should have. I mean, there were several against Washington. I noticed it more against Washington than I did against LSU, just a blatant lack of holding calls. But the bottom line here is, and you can blame it on penalties, and I walked away from the game thinking that penalties affected the game. And I tweeted something out, and a lot of people retweeted it. And I shouldn't have tweeted that out looking back on it. Because while it stood out late, some of the pass interference calls. If you think that those were bogus and that the refs affected the game, which you can totally think that, I don't care, but if you think that, let me know, and then also tell me that Auburn was the better team on Saturday, because they weren't. They weren't. I understand it sucks. I understand if you're listening to this, you're probably an Auburn fan, even though I think several LSU fans were smack-talking me for not putting one up because it was the day after LSU lost. I'm like, guys, I took a vacation. You're not special. Gosh, sound like fantastic people, though. Whatever. The internet's awful. All right, my last thing that I'll talk about. Gus Malzahn, he needs to be better. The pass interferences weren't his fault, and the play calling wasn't his fault. But he's the head man, and when you're getting paid that much money, which I can't stress enough, I still think was the right call. But he underperformed on Saturday. He got outcoached by a head coach that I don't think's that good. But Ed Orgeron is 2-0 against Gus Malzahn, and when one of them was on the road and one of them was at home, you get a little bit more of a sample size, and the fact that I think the past 2 years, the Auburn team has been better, but LSU was better on that given day. I think that says something. I don't know if I'm off more on Malzahn, my evaluation of Malzahn, or my evaluation of Ed Orgeron. We'll see. This LSU team, if Joe Burrow plays like he did against Auburn, this LSU team can challenge anybody. Maybe not Alabama, but they can challenge anybody else. So it's the way it is. It's the way it is. Let's see, I had a few tweets that I wanted to read. Let me see if I can pull those up real quick. Oh, come on. All right. Let's see. Noka tweets at me. Auburn had their chances. Auburn's in the same position UGA was with Mark Richt. We just have a LSU problem and not a Florida problem. Program is solid, but not great. Expect 7 to 10 losses over the next 2 years. So either 8-4 or 7-5. LSU, Georgia, Alabama, the biggest rivals, and they all out-recruit Auburn. Let's see. Then he said, not hiring Kirby after the 2012 season will be the ultimate what-if for Auburn football. Former Georgia player who coached under a legend while at Bama. Sounds real Pat Dye-ish to me. Oh, well, Auburn remains in football purgatory. Whew, that's going to make some people mad, but I don't think Auburn goes 8-4 this year. I think they go 9-3, unless something just changes. I'm not crazy about picking them to beat Alabama or Georgia on the road right now. Preston tweets at us, I'm looking at our defensive line, offensive line, Stidham inconsistent, no pass rush from our vaunted defensive line. Auburn simply overrated. Excuse my curtness, but Auburn better get their stuff together if they don't want to get embarrassed later on. Yeah, then he talked about LSU's offense looking better than it should have. And I don't know if should have is the right word, but I understand the frustration from everyone. It was bad. Especially when Sean Shiver scored, I think everybody watching that game thought it was over. Obviously, that wasn't the case. Hey, be sure to subscribe at auburnpodcast.com. Click on Become a Patron. You can follow me on Twitter at ZBlacker. We follow the show at Auburn Podcast. You can also like the show's Facebook page on Twitter. This has been another edition of the Auburn Podcast.